The name Richard Gere used to light up Hollywood screens with his charisma, skill, and memorable parts. He was more than simply a movie star. He was a gentleman, an officer, and a gorgeous woman. He was a worldwide celebrity. His personal life garnered just as much attention off screen as his work. However, beneath the glitz were hardships, heartaches, and experiences that permanently altered him. His life now, at 76, is substantially different from what his admirers recall. When he does make an appearance in public, it's difficult to notice the shift. Come along as we examine his journey and current state of life in further detail. Childhood and schooling. On August 31, 1949, Richard Gere was born in Philadelphia. He was the second child and eldest son of insurance agent Homer George Gere and housewife Doris Ann Gere. Richard was brought up in a Methodist household, and his father had once aspired to become a minister. Later they relocated to Syracuse, New York, where Richard grew up. His family had a long and illustrious history. The family name had even been changed from Gere to Gere by his paternal great-grandfather. Richard could also trace his ancestry back to the Mayflower, on both his father's and mother's sides. His forefathers' names, such as Richard Warren, Francis Cook, and William Brewster, put him in close contact with the Pilgrims. Richard displayed an artistic bent early in life. He completed his education at North Syracuse Central High School in 1967. He was a musician and an athlete in addition to being a student. He was a gifted gymnast and a trumpet player. He received a scholarship at the University of Massachusetts Amherst because of his gymnastics prowess. He started studying philosophy there, which sparked an interest in other topics. However, 2 years later, Richard made a decision that would permanently alter his future. He did not graduate from college. He was no longer headed toward philosophy or gymnastics. It was drawing him in a completely other direction. Soon after, that road led him into the performing industry, where chances and challenges awaited him. Become well known in Hollywood. In the middle of the 1970s, Richard started making movie appearances. In 1974, he had his first significant opportunity with the Lords of Flatbush. However, things did not go according to plan. Richard was replaced in the movie after a confrontation with Sylvester Stallone. However, obstacles like this just strengthened his resolve. Soon after, in 1977, he made a brief but noteworthy appearance in Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Next came Terrence Malick's 1978 film, Days of Heaven. Strong reviews were given to the movie, and Richard's career took off. American Gigolo in 1980 marked the true turning point. His remarkable on-screen persona captured the attention of the globe, and that movie made him a household name. He co-starred with Deborah Winger in An Officer and a Gentleman in 1982, just 2 years later. The movie received 6 Academy Award nominations and made close to $130 million. Although Richard's career had its ups and downs, he was guaranteed stardom after receiving his first Golden Globe nomination. He made appearances in films that had varying degrees of success during the remainder of the 1980s. Then he returned to the public eye in the 1990s. In 1990, movies like Pretty Woman and Internal Affairs were huge hits. Specifically, Pretty Woman nominated him for another Golden Globe and teamed him with Julia Roberts. His success only grew over the decade. He starred alongside Jodie Foster in Summersby, 1993, with Julia Roberts again in Runaway Bride, 1999, and with Primal Fear, 1996. In 1997, he even practiced his Irish accent while playing an IRA militant in The Jackal. He was rated the sexiest man alive by People magazine in 1999. The Mothman Prophecies, Unfaithful, and the award-winning Chicago were the 3 successful movies he starred in that year. He was awarded a Golden Globe for his performance in Chicago. Richard appeared to reach yet another pinnacle in the early 2000s, and he demonstrated his versatility by appearing in Shall We Dance as a ballroom dancer in 2004. Globally, that movie made $170 million. However, success in Hollywood is never permanent, and Richard would soon encounter new challenges on and off film. Thereafter, critical and professional recognition. Richard's efforts took a different turn after Shall We Dance. In 2005, his follow-up film, B Season, did not do well at the box office. Nevertheless, Richard continued to work, playing a journalist covering the Bosnian War in the 2007 film, The Hunting Party. He co-starred with Christian Bale and Heath Ledger in the film, I'm Not There later that year. In 2008, he and Diane Lane collaborated on the romance drama, Nights in Rachdanthe. Despite the scathing criticism from critics, who even named it one of the worst movies of the year. The movie made over $84 million worldwide. Richard also worked on a project that was fully produced by a big Hollywood studio for the last time with the movie. He subsequently disclosed the reason. Richard clarified that he was not wanted in Hollywood because of his political beliefs, particularly with reference to China. His vocal position cost him opportunities, because the Chinese market was crucial to many studios. Richard chose indie films rather than fading away. He received some of the best reviews of his career for these projects. Critics deemed his performance in Arbitrage in 2012 to be too outstanding to resist, earning him a fourth Golden Globe nomination. Additionally, he was honored with Lifetime Achievement Prizes from Hollywood, Cairo, and Hamptons film festivals. Richard kept taking chances. He played a small-time fixer in Norman in 2016, shocking viewers. He said that the play revealed a different side of him, one that he characterized as the needy and obnoxious aspects of ourselves. His performance was hailed by critics, who said it was intriguing and even deserving of an Oscar contender. Richard demonstrated his skills in music and dance in addition to acting. He played a guitar solo in Runaway Bride, and created and performed the piano piece in Pretty Woman. He practiced karate for A Gentleman and an Officer, and he learned tap dance for Chicago. One thing held true despite all of this commitment: Richard Gere was never nominated for an Academy Award. He is frequently cited by both fans and critics as one of the greatest actors who should have received that recognition but never did. Many people were left wondering how a well-known and gifted actor could experience such highs and lows in both his personal and Hollywood lives. The performer whose career was never planned. Almost everyone is familiar with the name Richard Gere. With films like Chicago, Pretty Woman, and An Officer and a Gentleman, he rose to international fame. Along the way, he accumulated accolades such as a Golden Globe, was nominated for an Emmy, and amassed a global following. It's odd, though, that Gere never had a set professional plan. "My career has never been planned out," he acknowledged. "My career was never engineered. I've just always done what I wanted to do." His film choices occasionally caught people off guard because of such straightforward honesty. He added that he felt fortunate, even though an actor is frequently constrained by the roles that are available. He began working with what he described as an amazing group of talented authors, performers, and directors. As he reflected on his career, he even said, "I'm kind of amazed myself that I've been able to ride this career this long with such good people." This indicates that Gere didn't meticulously construct success piece by piece. He wrote it with skill, good fortune, and timing. The road wasn't always simple, though, just because he was thankful. Conflicts behind the camera and issues with co-stars were among the Gere-related problems in Hollywood. However, it wasn't another actor that caused the most conflict in his career. It originated from the Academy Awards, one of the largest stages in the world. Richard Gere was well known for more than simply his acting at the Oscars. He also had a strong commitment to causes that were important to him. He dedicated a lot of his time to Tibet as a Buddhist. He was a co-founder of Tibet House in 1987, and by 1995 he was the head of the International Campaign for Tibet's board. He advocated against human rights violations, funded HIV/AIDS research, and promoted the preservation of Tibetan culture through the GE Foundation. Gere's desire to use his popularity for something more was not out of the ordinary given his passions. That's precisely what took place in 1993. At the Oscars, Gere took the stage to give the Best Art Direction prize. However, he deviated from the script when he got to the microphone. Rather, he talked about Tibet from the heart. He urged for peace, and detailed the appalling human rights situation under Chinese administration. In the hopes that Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping would withdraw soldiers from Tibet, he even encouraged the crowd to join him in sending him messages of love and sanity. His statements startled many, not because of his beliefs, but rather because of the context in which he delivered them. Politics was strictly prohibited from the Oscars stage by the Academy. Gere's remarks went too far. The Academy consequently prohibited him from attending any more ceremonies. That year, he wasn't the only one who had to deal with the fallout. Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon, two actors who addressed the plight of Haitian refugees during the Oscars, were also prohibited. But there was more to Gere's punishment. He was permanently banned from China. That was a major setback for a Hollywood actor, because the Chinese market has grown to be a large source of revenue for studios. Gere's decision to speak up had long-term consequences. However, the ban merely became a part of his story rather than a way to silence him. A return after years in the shadows. Richard Gere vanished from the Oscars after 1993. He never gave a presentation, or went back to that renowned platform for 20 years. His attitude about it all, however, was what really stood out. He seems unfazed. Apparently, I've been rehabilitated, he said to HuffPost years later. He was demonstrating that the situation didn't bother him by saying, "It seems if you stay around long enough, they forget they've banned you." 20 years later, in 2013, he returned to the Oscars. Even yet, he acknowledged that he wasn't very keen to go back to wearing tuxedos. In a 2017 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he made light of his absence by stating, "I was okay with not having to wear a tuxedo again." He shrugged, demonstrating that he was not resentful of the ban. He believed that the 1993 statement was something he stood by, and the years he spent out of the public eye were just one cost. What mattered was that he never recanted his statements. He never felt bad about discussing Tibet on that stage. And that choice influenced how the world viewed him, not only as a Hollywood celebrity, but also as someone who was prepared to jeopardize his fame for his convictions. In addition to explaining his years away from the Oscars, that conflict between his activism and Hollywood politics also explained why his career started to look extremely different from what fans had previously seen. Suddenly there was no sound from the box office. You know, the face of Hollywood romance used to be Richard Gere. With movies like American Gigolo, 1980, An Officer and a Gentleman, 1982, and Pretty Woman, 1990, he rose to fame. He later demonstrated that he was more than just a romantic lead with his performance in Chicago in 2002. He was also a talented actor in musicals. His career was successful and active for years. He was adored by audiences. He was hailed by critics, and studios used his fame to boost ticket sales. There was also a fascinating fact about him that many admirers were unaware of. Tiffany is his middle name. Although he had a lot of responsibilities in his early decades, things have changed significantly since then. Gere vanished from the screen for 4 years, following his role in the 2019 miniseries, Mother, Father, Son, Maybe I Do. His 2023 film was a minor comeback. However, it was difficult to ignore the hush that followed. People began to question whether Hollywood had abandoned him, and soon it was evident that growing older was not the only reason for Gere's absence, because his subsequent years of career painted a drastically different picture, despite the fact that his early years were full with box office successes. Every performer has unsuccessful films. However, too many of Richard Gere's subsequent endeavors were unsuccessful. Despite spending $23 million to make, his 2000 feature Dr. Tay and the Women didn't even make that much money. He starred in the 2009 film Amelia, which was a box office and review failure, earning only $14.2 million out of a $40 million budget. Despite costing almost 3 times as much to make, his thriller, The Double, only made $4.7 million worldwide 2 years later. Despite being based on a Nicholas Sparks novel, Nights in Rodanthe 2008 failed to achieve the same level of popularity as past Sparks films. Despite its impressive earnings of $84 million, it was viewed as unsatisfactory when compared to other products in the same category. By 2017, the figures had dropped much further. He co-starred with Laura Linney and Steve Coogan in The Dinner, which only brought in $2.5 million globally. For an actor who used to draw large audiences to theaters, Three Christs earned fewer than $40,000 in total that year. This was a significant shift. Yes, Gere had previously starred in big-budget films. The Jackal, Pretty Woman, and Runaway Bride brought in $159 million globally. However, they were no longer in a rush to watch his latest movies. Many questioned whether his days as a box office star were coming to an end as a result. Additionally, his professional decisions disclosed much more information than the ticket sales did. Remaining on the large screen, Richard Gere's decision to focus nearly exclusively on movies may be one factor contributing to his decline in Hollywood. As streaming services like Netflix, Prime Video, and HBO started to dominate both prizes and audiences, many of his friends transitioned into television. Gere, however, hardly ever went that route. He avoided the small screen save for documentaries and the 2019 miniseries, Mother, Father, Son. This made it harder for him to reach new audiences. It also meant that he was excluded from the major television productions that helped actors his age advance in their careers. Additionally, despite starting in theater, Gere never went back to the stage. He received accolades for his performances in plays like Bent, back in the 1970s. His performance in Chicago years later demonstrated that he was still capable of handling musicals. However, Gere took a step back, in contrast to several actors who went back to Broadway or gave live performances another go. He had less opportunities to shine, as he didn't have theater and TV jobs to balance his career. His career appeared even more subdued due to this lack of diversity, while those around him continued to succeed by adjusting to new formats. Even though Gere stayed off several routes, he wasn't doing nothing. He was now more interested in a life outside of Hollywood, something completely different from red carpets and screenplays. Richard Gere's commitment to Buddhism and humanitarian issues has long been well known. He has decades of experience working with nonprofits and charities, and he co-founded Tibet House. He works to safeguard tribal villages, educate people, and raise awareness about AIDS. In an interview with Lion's Roar in 1999, Gere discussed the ways in which his faith influenced his life. He stated, "I find that more and more my involvement in a career in a normal householder life is a great challenge for deepening the teachings inside of me." He clarified that he wouldn't have to deal with the difficulties and challenges that shaped him if he weren't living in the world of work and family. He explained that his spiritual journey included participating in the marketplace. It was evident from his viewpoint that his personal values came first. He was always interested in more than just filmmaking. Furthermore, it lost even more priority over time. He demonstrated that giving back was always at the core of his life by working with groups like Doctors Without Borders and Amnesty International. That meant he wasn't always available to Hollywood. Additionally, his fervor for activism occasionally ran against the industry's emphasis on profits and box office receipts. Fans continued to have optimism even as his career slowed down, perhaps another chance to see Julia Roberts. However, even that dream started to wane. The demise of a legendary pair. The collaboration between Julia Roberts and Richard Gere produced two of Hollywood's most cherished movies. The 1990 film Pretty Woman became a cultural icon and a box office success. They got back together in 1999 for Runaway Bride, which did well as well. Although fans adored their connection and anticipated future collaborations, a third movie never materialized. In an interview with Gayle King, Julia Roberts made the final decision. She responded in a bittersweet way when asked what became of their Pretty Woman identities. She claimed that while her own character Vivian continued to operate his business, Gere's character Edward most likely died quietly in his sleep from a heart attack while grinning. The prospect of another reunion was also discussed by Gere himself. He clarified in an interview with US Weekly that the magic of their collaboration was exclusive to just two films, saying, "We have done two movies and they were both successful, so maybe we should just let it go at that." It was disappointing for fans who hoped to see them together once more. For Gere, however, the focus was on progress. The once unstoppable Hollywood romance sensation is now living a completely different life as a result, one molded by peaceful years, individual decisions, and an emphasis distant from the glamour of the film business, a reputation that followed him. Once one of Hollywood's most adored celebrities, Richard Gere's notoriety also caused some to view him differently. He was a guest on the British chat show, Aspel & Company in 1989. Gere didn't like the title when host Michael Aspel introduced him as a sex icon. "We had a phone call from his agent saying if I didn't remove the sex symbol thing, they were going to take it up with their lawyer. He wouldn't be known as a sex symbol," Aspel recounted after the interview. Aspel acknowledged that he thought the response was strange, explaining that he took himself very seriously because he'd done a lot of work for the Tibetan people. This instance demonstrated how Gere was different from the portrayal that the media gave him. Although the world saw him as a romantic star, he wanted to be known for more significant causes. And this seriousness added to the perception that he wasn't always easy to work with. Life at home during the pandemic. Richard Gere's career slowed even more after 2019. His seriousness became part of his story, and as his career slowed, the world started to see more of his private life than his screen roles. Hollywood values image, and sometimes an actor's personal approach shapes the roles they're offered. However, this was not just about Hollywood. Like many others, Gere's life was altered by the pandemic. He starred in the BBC miniseries Mother, Father, Son before going 4 years without appearing in anything. The reason for this was straightforward. He decided to stay at home with his family. In an interview with Sky News in 2023, Gere said, "I just stayed at home with my family. I mean, I didn't really want to go through the procedures for making movies at that time because they were so intimidating." He prioritized spending time with his wife, Alejandra Silva, and their kids, over months spent under stringent limitations on set. He bided his time, waiting for the ideal project. He reappeared with the movie Maybe I Do when safety precautions started to loosen up. Regarding his return, Gere stated, As a result, it relaxed somewhat and the script emerged. With performers I knew, had previously worked with, and trusted, I figured this would be a fun and mature way to re-enter the workforce. William H. Macy, Susan Sarandon, Emma Roberts, and Diane Keaton were among the well-known actors who starred in the movie. It was the ideal method for Gere to return after a long absence. However, he was also facing a whole other struggle, even if the pandemic kept him at home. One that went on for over 10 years. Because Gere had a case that followed him to court while he was away from the cameras. 15 years of judicial proceedings. Richard Gere and Bollywood actress Shilpa Shetty visited India in 2007 for a public function. Gere gave Shetty multiple pecks on the cheek during the event. Outrage was sparked by what was intended as an awareness-raising effort. The Supreme Court of India issued an arrest warrant for Gere after accusations of obscenity were made. Long after the incident was over, the case continued to make headlines for years. Gere clarified that his efforts were intended to increase public awareness of HIV by demonstrating that the virus cannot be spread by kissing. Nevertheless, the Indian court system continued to pursue the case for nearly 16 years. Ultimately, the court dropped the accusations against Shetty in April 2023. The case came to an end after many years, when the court ruled that a woman being groped on the street, or touched on a public way, or in public transport cannot be termed as accused or participative to an extent of mental culpability, and she cannot be held for illegal omission to make her liable for prosecution. However, it demonstrated how one public appearance may cast a shadow over a person's career. Gere started to doubt himself in ways he had never done before, even while he dealt with legal issues overseas, because resuming acting after a long break felt uncertain due to age, health, and confidence issues. Richard Gere acknowledged that he wasn't sure if he still had what it took to be an actor when he made a comeback in 2023. Whenever I start a project, I kind of question whether I know what I'm doing at all. And after 3 years of not making a film or working in the theater, I think I had this feeling of, do I know how to do this? Did I ever know how to do this? Gere expressed his doubts in an open interview with Sky News, similar to many people going back to work after extended breaks during the pandemic. However, he immediately regained his balance. He said, "You pretty much remember how to do it." His candor revealed that even celebrities have self-confidence issues, particularly after a period of inactivity. He likened acting to riding a bike. Gere also experienced health issues during this time. He was hospitalized with pneumonia in early 2023 while on vacation with his family in Mexico. Prior to the trip, he had been ill, and while there, his condition deteriorated. After receiving antibiotics and spending one night in the hospital, he was discharged. Richard is feeling much better. We are all feeling much better, almost back to normal. Alejandra, his wife, posted an update on Instagram, explaining that the entire family had been ill with various ailments, but had fortunately recovered. Everyone was reminded by Gere's health issues that he was no longer the youthful star of the 1980s and 1990s. He became 74 in 2023, having been born in 1949. Gere, who is in his 70s, is raising 2 young sons, Alexander, who was born in 2019, and another in 2020. He talked about it, saying, "I don't really have the luxury of thinking about time or getting older, because I have a 2.5-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, a nearly 4-year-old, and a 10-year-old. However, he has accepted the fact that aging is inevitable, saying, it would be foolish for people to not engage with it, and even early on to just think about it." He added, "But I get at best a finite number of years, and it might be a lot shorter based on health and accidents and all kinds of other things, so it is definitely inevitable." Richard Gere is not yet done, but his personal life has also been filled with ups and downs, with both love and controversy influencing his later years. These words reveal a man who has experienced fame, faced obstacles, and now lives with awareness of both his age and his blessings. Family struggles and controversy. Richard Gere's wife, Alejandra Silva, wrote a heartfelt Instagram post on his 76th birthday in September 2025, calling him their family's rock and saying, "This year has brought changes and challenges, but through it all, you've been the constant, our rock." She expressed her gratitude to him for his love and patience with their 2 young sons, saying, "You are everything to us, the best husband and the best dad." She also posted pictures of their children with him wearing a crown on his head, captioning it, "King for a Day." It depicted an elderly man who was still adored at home, but the birthday fell during a period of public outrage. Gere had just sold a historic Connecticut mansion to a developer for $10.75 million. The house had once belonged to singer Paul Simon, but it had been demolished to create space for a new subdivision. Simon's daughter Lulu was particularly outraged by the decision, posting on social media, "Just in case anyone was wondering if I still hate Richard Gere, I do." She accused him of breaching his pledge to protect the land, and conveyed her hope that her dead pets buried in that backyard would haunt him. Although the posts were later removed, the damage had already been done. Gere and Alejandra remained silent throughout the demolition, concentrating instead on their family and their new life in Spain. Even though salvage experts were able to save important parts of the house, including a full oak library and stone steps, nevertheless, the loss of the mansion infuriated locals and fans. In a life already full of twists, Alejandra later clarified that their move was intended to bring them closer to her family, but that they would still travel frequently to the US for this new chapter, which means juggling a European home with his American roots. Do you think Richard Gere will make a big comeback in Hollywood with these new projects? Or is his focus now more on family life? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more amazing stories from Hollywood's interesting history. Until we meet again.